Hi guys, it's Kelly here and I'm back with another video. Today's video is featuring some new products from Colorado Craft Company and Chris Lauren. This is The Way of Plants, and the set includes, there's multiple sets. The release includes 3 generously sized sets and then 1 kind of mini set. And if you follow me on Instagram, you saw I used the little mini set yesterday with some quick watercoloring. But today we are going to be talking about some shading shortcuts with alcohol markers. So I am inking these up, and I am inking them up in alcohol safe ink, even though you're going to see later on, like, I honestly didn't give them enough time to dry. I was a little bit not paying attention to my timeline because I was interrupted in the middle of it. But anywho, so I'm stamping these down in black ink, and I am going to color the whole image, even though the whole image doesn't fit on an A2 size card. So if you're a 5x7 card maker, or you're interested in making 5x7 cards, these types of images would be absolutely perfect for it. But the shading shortcut that I wanted to share, which, by the way, you can thank Dawn, my friend Dawn, for the alliteration, because I wasn't sure what to call this technique, and she came up with that, and it fit perfectly for what I was trying to convey. Sometimes naming a technique is harder than the technique itself. This one's super simple. So here you can see I have my color wheel, and what I want to talk to you about is, a lot of times when you're coloring more intricate designs, it can be very tedious to get good shading on everything. And so the shortcut today is basically we're going to color the whole image. And for me, one of them is going to be blue and one of them is going to be yellow. What I'm doing here is I'm working with the analogous colors. I'm going to show you all of them. But first I started with the analogous colors over top of the blue so I could see how they worked together. The analogous colors, which basically just means they're colors next to my color on the color wheel. So a blue-green, a blue-violet, a violet, a green, those colors are going to work best, meaning they're going to stay more true to their actual tone and they're not going to create a brown or a muddy look. So you can see on the blue version, like the yellow and the green almost look exactly the same because when you put yellow over blue, it creates green. And then for the yellow, its analogous colors are going to be a green, an orange, a red. Those colors will look nicest on there. That doesn't mean that you can't use the other colors. It just means it's going to change the hue or its natural color. So whatever color you decide to color your object, for me, it's going to be these vases, or plant pots. Vases? They're pots, Kelly. That's what they are. Then you want to put that down as your base color and then just put some of the other colors over top of it so you can see which ones will work well. So I'm only going to do shading with my base color. That's what you see me doing here. To give this a more round appearance, I'm giving it a center highlight, which means the left and the right hand sides will be darker and the lightest portion will be in the center. So that way it looks as if the pot is wrapping back around to the part that we can't see. That's what that darkness is giving the illusion of. So just going through, working out from my darkest to my lightest color. And then from there, we'll be able to add those other colors on top without having to do any shading because the shading is done for us already with just this base color. We won't have to add multiple layers of colors to get a good look. So here, I'm just going to bring this back in. I am going to go in with a yellow. It will look more yellow on the lighter blue and more green on the darker blue, but that's completely okay. You don't, like I said before, you don't necessarily have to stay with the colors that are right next to it on the color wheel, but those will be the ones that stay truest to their natural color. So if you put a violet over a blue, it's definitely still going to look violet. If you put a yellow over a blue, it's probably going to look green. But again, that's totally okay. Also, we'll talk a little bit more with the next pot about changing the darkness. For me, when I was doing it, I tried to stay pretty close to the base color that I put down, which was a BO2. So I tried to stay within the 2 to 5 range for the colors I put on top of it, so that the darkness of the color wasn't canceling out my base color. I hope that makes sense. I hope I'm not confusing you. Basically, you don't want the color to be too dark and completely cover up your other color, unless that is your intention. So here, going in with the pink, and I'm not going to show this portion of the design took the longest, so I'm not going to show you the whole thing, but you're going to get the gist of it. When it's over in the shaded portion on the far left, it definitely looks more violet, but as it comes around to the front, it will appear to be more pink or red violet, because the color there is lighter, which allows more of that pink to show through, which is what is giving us the shading without having to do any further shading than our base color. So with that said, I also went in, this one is a blue-green. I originally went with the lighter color. This is a 23, but I'm going to change that later on. So before we get any further in this video, let me just tell you that today is the last day for free shipping for Colorado Crafts. They always have 2 free shipping days. Today is the last day for free shipping, so if you're like, I super love these stamps, today would be a good day to pick them up, because you won't have to pay for shipping, and don't we all appreciate not having to do that? So now everything in the image is colored without having to do really any, just that baseline shading. I decided to color the top and the bottom of the vase. Why do I keep saying that? Pot. It's a pot, Kelly. The top and the bottom of the pot white. And so I'm just adding some shadows with my grays. Ultimately, you're not going to be able to see the bottom of the pot because I'm going to cut it off. But I wanted to show you how I would do it in case you are using the full image. Another way that you can do this, and you guys have seen me do this before with what I call color glazing, you could do your base layer shading with gray markers and keep your markers that go on top their original hue for the most part. And you would just want to pick, if you were using warmer colors, reds, orange, yellows, pinks, you would want to use a warm gray. If you were using cooler colors, greens, blues, violets, you would want to use a cooler gray, just so that they would make sense together. Let's move on to the cacti. I went with a bright yellow green because I thought that it matched the pot really nicely. And so what I'm doing is I'm going in and I'm laying down my darkest shadows where I want where 2 points meet, like where 2 points on the cactus meet, or where I want it to look as if it's inset. So your highlight points will appear to be the furthest out, and your darkest points will appear to be inset. Here I'm just going back over it because in the middle of this I had to stop and refill my marker. That YG17 was pretty dry, and so it needed to be refilled, and I just wanted to make sure everything was smooth. So then going in now with my second to lightest color, I'm trying to leave some white highlights on the edges and like that piece that's in the front for my YG01, so that it will give it more dimension. In doing this, I realized that I lost a lot of my darkness, and so I'm just going to go back in with my darkest color and just do lines where I want it to be the darkest, and that's going to put that dimension right back in there. The way that these 2 cacti are drawn, one is kind of pushing out in front of the other, and so that is why the cactus on the left and the bottom right is shaded darker, and that's so this portion of the cactus will kind of come out to the front because we're going to make that lighter, which will push it forward, just like we talked about with the highlights. So you going back to the shading shortcut, you don't have to stick to the same end numbers like you do when you're trying to blend color families. You can for sure go a little bit darker than what you originally, tested out, if you're not getting the look that you want, and you're going to see that quite a bit for me here in this next pot. So this one is done until we go back and do the details, because you guys know I love the details. This one I picked because I loved the pot. I'm just going to be real with you. I loved the design on this pot, and I really wanted to use it. So I am going to start with a base of yellow. Now you may be saying to yourself, Kelly, this is a very, very brown. This is a very brown yellow. I like a golden yellow. Not everybody does, but because I like a golden yellow, I use a golden brown as my darkest color. And I'm shading this the same way. I'll add the shading on the left and the right hand sides to my pot. And then I will be bringing in my more true yellows. And again, here you'll be able to see there is a little bit of ink smearing. In between me doing this, Peanut actually got picked up by his dad. So I kind of was at couldn't remember what place I left off in. And because I did end up stamping this one twice, I should have heat set it or let it dry longer, but I didn't. And ultimately, at the end of the day, I don't think in the finished design it is a huge deal, but I didn't want you to think that it was the ink. It's not the ink. It's that I was not properly timing things. So I've colored the whole pot gold, as well as this little liner. The liner at the top, like the little edge, is actually going to be the only part that really stays true gold. So now looking at my yellows, I'm looking at the colors that I know that I like how they're looking. I like how this pink or this red violet looks over top of it. And so I went in and did that. I colored in the little hearts in the design as well as the floral. And then these little extra, I don't even know what you like, little swoopy pieces. I colored the inside of the swoopy, the inside of the swoopies. I colored those pink as well. And then from there, I moved on. And again, this is another example of you don't have to stay within your analogous colors. The next color that I moved to is actually blue. And I knew when I put it down that it would be more green. And I was fine with that. I was okay with it being more of a blue-green than a true blue. But you'll have to make that decision for yourself with whatever you're coloring. This is just a way that I have found to make coloring things like this, where maybe they can appear to be a little bit overwhelming, a little bit easier and a little bit more approachable for somebody who maybe isn't as comfortable doing all of the shading on all of these individual pieces to make your pot look round. Plus, who doesn't like saving a little bit of time? I mean, I enjoy coloring as much as the next person, but sometimes it's nice to just know that you have a little technique in your back pocket that will knock something out beautifully and quickly. So here I went in and I did the blue-green or the teal, and this was too close to the blue for me. So I decided to change it up because I was already on that kind of green. I decided to just go over those same areas in a green, and I didn't like that either. This technique is super forgiving. So that it was okay. I didn't necessarily love it, but don't worry. We're going to come up with a way to fix it because that's what I'm all about. I'm not about starting all over again. So because my green was so close to my blue, I went in and added another layer of blue to see if I could kind of bolster up the blue a little bit enough for it to make a difference. And it didn't work. But that's okay because we tried it and now we know that that's not something that will work with this particular color combination. And so to make it more blue, I am going to take it darker. So I started with a B02. Now I am going to go in with a B04. And because this is a little bit darker and it's going to cover up that yellow a little bit more, it's going to appear to be more blue. Now, Does that mean it's true to its natural color? No, absolutely not. We're layering colors here, but it is definitely more blue than it was before, and it was enough of a trade-off. Like there was enough contrast between the two colors that you can tell that they were different colors, and then I was okay with that. So now we're going to really do something crazy. I wanted to keep the yellow. I loved the gold trim, and I wanted to keep the yellow inside the main design, but in order to make that pop and bring it forward, I went in with a dark blue. It's actually a mid-tone. It's a B06, and I layered it right over top of that yellow. In doing so, I created kind of like a dark blue green, which is very complementary to the yellow colors and allows that gold to pop forward as part of the design instead of the main color of the pot. So that's another way that you can kind of mix it up. Here, I'm just checking to see how they look next to each other, and I realized that I really would prefer a darker teal. Remember how I told you I was going to change that? So I went in with a BG09 to really separate those kind of little squares that are that are the centers of all the lines. And I liked that much better on this particular design by making them a little bit darker. So please play around with this, have fun with it. And again, if you want colors that are true to their natural hue, you want to shade with gray as your base color. Now that I'm happy with the way that the pot looks, I am using those same green colors to go in and shade my cactus. I am shading it the same way I did the pot. I am adding a little bit of shadow underneath the top where it's flowering, and then shadows to the left and right, as well as the bottom where it's coming up out of the pot, because it's tucked behind, so it would have shadows there. Let's see, the last time that we talked, the party. So part of the shenanigans for Eric's birthday this weekend was actually my gift to him. And so on Friday, my Peanut was with his dad. My mom watched the baby so that we could go out because I bought him tickets to a murder mystery dinner. I typically buy my husband for his birthday or Father's Day or whatever experiences because he enjoys that more than things. Like when we get out and do something like out of the house and do something a little bit different. And so there's a brewery that's relatively close to us that was doing a murder mystery. And so I purchased tickets for that. It was super fun. We got to get a little bit dressed up. I had put out the information to my sisters when I bought the tickets and asked them if anybody was interested in going. They both were. So we get to sit at a table together, hang out, the six of us, and do a little murder mystery dinner. It was fun. The food was amazing. But the only thing that I will say is, like, it had 9... I've only been to one other murder mystery dinner, and when they did that, they kind of had the actors interdispersed throughout the tables, so you didn't know they were actors until they kind of got sucked into the story, and then everything was kind of happening in the center of the room. This one was different, where they started off with the lead detective kind of telling you about the murder and then all of the suspects, and then the suspects were there, they were in character, and you could ask them questions. They would come around to your table, and they were not allowed to lie to you, but you could not ask them if they did it. And the whole theme was like a country music star that was killed in his hotel. And so they had a little piece of paper with all of their little biographies, and you could take notes on it and all that jazz. So the only hiccup that I found was because the room was so packed, the dinner was sold out, that not all the actors made it to our table, so it made a little more challenging. Let's go back to the card. So I have gotten away from always outlining my cards, but sometimes I feel like it's super necessary, and in this case I did feel like it was super necessary because I really wanted those bold black lines to help these designs pop, so I did outline them. This is not necessary, but it's something that I like to do. And then I'm going to go in and put in a bunch of details with my white gel pen. Some things to know. Mine is a jelly roll. It is a 10 that is what it is. They all have different sizes. An 08 is a little smaller. I also have those, but this one is a 10. And the reason that I chose the 10 was because I knew I was going to be coloring in some items. I'm also going in and putting in all the little needles on my cacti. And this is just a fun little added detail that's kind of going to bring the coloring up a notch because we paid attention to those little details. So on every single one of these little dots, I added the little needles. It was super quick. I just flicked out left, right, up, down, and it went by really fast. The other thing I'm going to do with my white gel pen is I'm going to go back to the details of my pots. More so this one than the other one, but so I went in and I colored in some of the more intricate portions with a white gel pen. It's almost impossible not to cover any of the black. I'm just going to be honest. But I know that I will go in and fix that with my fine liners. But if you are a person who does not want to do the fine liner, this portion of it may not be for you. You may want to pick larger areas where it's much easier to keep the white gel pen off of your black outline. And so in order to create, I told you, that contrast that I felt was missing, I did go into kind of the flowery pieces on the sides and color those in white. This is why the 10 is important. The 10 is going to put out enough ink that I will be able to solidly color these in without it skipping or without being able to see the strokes. The ink will fill in solid. Some people have asked me how you keep it from absorbing the color underneath. And honestly, I think it just depends on the color. I didn't really have any issues with these ones with the green underneath, but I did have, you'll see on the next card, I did just a couple of the triangles. So basically any triangle that was on top, I colored white, and any triangle that was to the right, I colored white. Just to add in, like I said, those details that make it mine, make it a little bit different. You can see in the finished card that some of the yellow underneath it. This did not bother me in this case, but if it's something that bothers you, you may want to try a different gel pen. I can't give you any guidance on what gel pen to try because these are the ones that I use, but maybe a different one than this. It does sometimes pick up. Like, to me, they still look relatively white. And then this is just me going back in and re-outlining those things to make sure that I have that bold black outline that I enjoy. So anywho, back to the murder mystery. So they didn't make it to all the tables. And I know, like, they had put out on their Facebook page, the place that hosted it, that they had added tables. And I think so. I think that in the future they would maybe need to just make it smaller, like not have as many participants, in order to make sure that everybody got the full experience that they paid for. I will say that at the more towards the end, they did do a basically like where the detective asked of the suspects a bunch of questions. So before you made your guess, you could get more information. Here with the card, what I'm doing is I'm just trying to figure out, I know that they're too large for an A2 size card, so I'm trying to figure out which portions I'm going to cut off. The one that's a little bit taller, I opted to just cut off the bottom. I felt like that was the best orientation. And then the other one, you could go to the left or the right, depending upon how you were feeling. I felt like it was more important to keep the top of the cacti and the center of the pot than it was to keep kind of the outskirts of the pot. And so that is how I chose to do that one. So anyway, they did bring them all up at the end to be interviewed so you could get more information before you made your guess. And so with the guesses, if you got it right, then you were entered in for like some prizes and stuff, some gift cards and things like that. So the only person in our group to get it right was my sister Kimberly, and she was like, I originally guessed somebody else and then I scratched it out, and put the other person. So unfortunately she did not win a gift card, but she did get it right. So she's got those bragging rights because the rest of us got it wrong. So that was super nice. It was, I don't want to taint the fun of the story by telling you all about my anxiety. I will tell you about that in another video. But it ended up being a very nice night despite the other things that were trying to get me. They were trying to get me, but it's all right. It ended up being good. So here, there are dies for some of the sentiments, but not all. So the one that I picked, which I think is actually pretty accurate, life is like a cactus, thorny but beautiful, does have a coordinating die. The other one have a fan cactus birthday, which I think is super cute. I think it's super cute. Does not have a die. So fortunately, that one's pretty straight. I'm assuming that's why they didn't do a die for it. So I just trimmed it into a label after I did my heat embossing. And then the other one I did cut out with its coordinating die. Because these stamps are so generously sized, it was actually super easy to put the sentiments together. A lot of times I have a hard time figuring out where to put my sentiment because I don't want to cover up too much of my coloring. But that's the nice thing about large images, like a small sentiment like this, and they're not even small. They're good sized. Doesn't matter because you can still see the vast majority of the coloring, and like I'm totally here for that. So I just glued these down flat. I know I haven't been doing any foam tape at all lately, but that's okay. I'm totally feeling this flat card business. And then this one, I just put it in the upper middle of my pot. I did add some glitters to the pots and some of the details. Just because I like a little added shine. You certainly could leave this off if it's not your vibe. And then that is it. That is both of the cards. So thank you guys so much for joining me. I always appreciate your time. Like I said, if you're interested in these, today is the last free shipping day. I will link that below. I hope that you guys are having a wonderful week. We have so many more videos this week to share with you, and I will catch you on the next one. Bye.